Welcome to the Boomer Briefing podcast, where we can help you solve a critical business issue in 20 minutes or less. My name is Sandra Wiley, and I'm the president of BoomerConsulting. And today I am joined by Jacqueline Lombardo, our operations strategist with Boomer. Hi, Jacqueline. Good to see you today. And we are going to be talking about today creating space for wellness in the workplace. So, Jacqueline, I am going to just throw it out to you right away and say, why in the world are we talking about this now, and why has it become an issue in our history today?
Well, I just want to say thank you, Sandra, for having me. I'm excited to be here today, and I can definitely talk to why do I think that wellness in general is really popping up in the workforce. And I think a lot of that had to do with COVID. Back in 2020, which now feels like a lifetime ago, but not that far, the whole world shifted. We went from, being in the office, having spaces and connections, and, you have your outings and vacations, and all of a sudden all that stopped. And it became, okay, we're at home and we're isolated. But we also saw a lot of benefits during COVID of not like shorter commutes or no commute technically. You got to spend more time with your family. You had more time for physical activity, spiritual activities. For some, even the wellness hit their financial. Since they're not commuting, they weren't spending money on gas or eating out all the time. So I think as COVID really brought that along, we saw a lot more education too of coming out of COVID of what were the benefits. Now, one, we do know we like human connection. So that is a benefit that I think we saw coming out is we need more human connection. People aren't meant to be isolated. But also, all right, now we can educate people on let's take time for your mental health and wellness. Let's, take time to have different working environments that help you stay physical. Let's look at those flexible schedules. And I think that really started to educate people on just, when it's work, it's not just your work, it's your work-life balance. And if you're a better person and you have more time to really focus on wellness, that does play into the workforce as well.
I think you're spot on. I really believe that we're going to look back in history and we're going to see that COVID, while it was challenging, obviously, in that 2020, 2021, even bleeding into 2022 was hard. I also think we learned a lot. And I think this is one of the spaces and places in our human existence that actually will help us be better. So I completely agree with you that that's kind of where the shift happened and where we started. So when you think about the firms that we work with at Boomer and the firms that you have met, the clients you've met, your friends you've met, what strategies do you think are really being able to be created for wellness to emerge within our businesses?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one of the biggest strategies that I've seen come out of COVID is flexibility. So flexibility, not only in your hours, which can help support families. So, if you have a young kid at home, being able to drop them off at daycare or pick them up or go to a school activity, I think can really drive that balance in life. But also just, do you have to be in the office 5 days a week? Do you have to be remote 5 days a week? Can there be a combination? And really figuring out what works best for each person, because some people really do thrive in that remote environment, and some really thrive with being at home. And some, you do need the mix. But I think figuring out what works for the person and the business to really also help drive those business goals while giving that flexibility is a huge one. I know a couple things as well. Here at Boomer, we focus on physical health as well. So we do quarterly health quest challenges. So we just got off doing one as a group challenge, and that was a walking challenge. And now we're going into individual challenges, but I think that helps challenge each person physically. And some of those can be mental, health challenges as well. But to push ourselves and to, look at how we can become better in our lives, in our work. And I think there's also a lot of strategies around diversity as well that we can start implementing of really helping educate the team around diversity and having floating holidays so people can have those days in their lives that are important to them. and really be able to focus on the areas of their life that are the most important, that bring them the most joy and the most success, but then can really help bubble up into their workplace as well. I'm sure you've talked with a lot of firms, so I'm sure you've seen a couple other strategies in there as well.
I agree with you. There's a million different things out there that people can use for that wellness piece, but I got to tell you, I love the challenges that people are having. I love the things that are both bringing us together as a community, so internally, and also helping the person. I love the word you use, joy, bringing the person joy, and it shows that our workplace is more than just work today. We've oftentimes said that we spend more time with the people at work than we do with the people in our own homes sometimes. So, which is kind of a sad state of affairs, but I really believe it's just a lot of things have happened there. I've seen a lot more lunch and learns happen where people are learning about health and wellness and mindfulness in lunch and learns, which I think you and I have talked about this before, and both of us are very in our hearts are very close to the DEI and B initiatives, and I think that blends right in together. Do you think about that as being something that blends in with this whole mindfulness and wellness space?
Absolutely. I mean, there's so many cultures out there that they have different practices. And I think when you try to put everybody in a box and say, hey, this is an important practice, for some that may be not what's important to them. I know there are some religions that are much more spiritual than others. There's different holidays that mean different things to individuals. And when it comes to wellness as well, there's different needs people have, and we're not all the same. So I think when you try to break it apart and give people that flexibility to really fit what's important in their life, especially if it's, has to do with their religion or their background, can really help just create that wellness environment overall. And it will also help educate your team and other team members about different cultures and different areas, because a lot of times we're not all the same and we do have different beliefs. And if people are willing to share, you can learn a lot and just be there to educate.
Yeah, I think it'd be super interesting almost to do a survey someday about, what have you learned? What makes you different today than you were several years ago before, like from 2019 to now? What have you learned? What's new for you? Because I think everybody in the world has increased their knowledge about other races, diversities. And I love the fact that it came right back around to flexibility again, right? It's about a flexible work environment. But while I think all of everything we've talked about is really great, I also think that there can be challenges. And so when you think about what could go wrong as you implement these strategies, or what could be a challenge as you're implementing these strategies, what comes to mind for you there?
I've got a couple that definitely come to mind. First off, when it comes to like the mental health awareness, we're not experts. So I think we have to be very careful that we leave, especially crisis situations or issues that may arise, to the experts. And that's really where, you can leverage your EAPs and use that as a resource if somebody really needs that help. I think also just consistency within a firm. If you have one leader who's, saying, hey, mental health's really important, take days if you need it, and another leader who's saying, don't do that. We just need to work. We've got a high workload. You're sending two different messages. So the consistency across your leaders and your managers, I think, is really important. The other two that come to mind, one is just not trying to implement too much at once.
Mhm.
I think if you over implement and things don't go well, then people start to kind of be like, well, is this really working? Are they really invested in this? And it can just also create confusion. And the last one, I think we've talked a lot about flexibility, but I think in a firm, you also need accountability. So if you don't have that accountability with the flexibility, you could swing too far one way. And you want to make sure, again, that you're staying consistent with that, and that you have the accountability consistent across all your firm, so that can give you the flexibility you're looking for and to really build upon that in your firm.
I think that those are all so great. And we do a lot of teaching here at Boomer. And one of the things that we teach is about coaching, counseling, and mentoring. And we always tell people, it's fine if you're mentoring people, it's fine if you're coaching people. But when you get to the counseling piece, that's not your job. None of us are trained to do that, or at least most of us aren't. I do remember a time when I met a firm that they'd actually hired a counselor, a true almost therapist person to come into the firm and work with people, and that's okay. And again, that was since COVID began, and that was something new that they'd started. And obviously, it was a little bit larger firm, but that's okay. In fact, I think that's wonderful. It's if you are not a licensed therapist or a licensed counselor, you just need to stop short of doing that, because you can get yourself personally, you can get the individual, and you can get the firm into a lot of trouble. So I could not agree with you more on that. I also really loved your comment about accountability. We're here to hold people accountable. And that helps us all kind of stay within the guardrails of what works and what doesn't work. So totally agree with you there. When you think about that positive side of creating space for mental and physical wellness in the workplace, what are some outcomes that a firm could really expect to get positively out of implementing some of those things we've been talking about?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think one is an enjoyable working environment. If people have time to focus and come to work happy, your whole environment and culture is just going to be enjoyable and happy and just better off in the long run. It can definitely help increase communication. You know, I know when I'm happy, it's easier to want to reach out to coworkers and do updates. If I'm having an off day, I just want to be left alone, just get my work done, be left alone. So I do think it increases communication. And I think it can decrease stress. If I know when I can get out and I can go work out and I can work on my journaling and do certain things, I show up a lot less stressed. On the weeks that I don't get that, I come in definitely with a heightened sense of stress, just feeling off some weeks. And it's just about finding that balance. So I think you can really help, just that person come and feel like, okay, I'm here to work. Let me get my work done. I'm in a good headspace. And then I can go home and enjoy my family instead of kind of, I think we've all been there. You have that bad day. You don't want to be at work. It's not enjoyable. And you just leave deflated. So the more you can create that positive environment and the more people can show up as themselves and be authentic, I think the better off you're going to be overall.
Boy, I couldn't, and I think about that years ago. We used to call them mental health days. And I remember managers that I had when I was kind of growing up in my business career that would kind of poo-poo that, right? They would be like, oh, that's so stupid. That was farther ahead of our time than we thought, because now we know that we do have days like that. Everybody does, where you just want to go, you know what? I need to take a breath. And taking that breath for a day or a weekend or something, and then really coming back strong, you just feel so much better. And I think that's a positive side of that. One of the apps that we haven't talked about, and I think I hear about a lot at firms, is Calm, where you can learn how to breathe differently. You can learn how to take a breath and just kind of do some calming things so that you can get back and do your work well. So I think that's another tool that I think is a good one out there.
Yeah, that is a great tool.
Yeah, I think we have encouraged that at Boomer, but I also think I've heard a ton of firms out there that have either paid for it or encouraged their employees to get that. So, if you were sitting there one-on-one with all of the people listening to the podcast today, and they said to you, what's the one piece of advice that you could give us that would really help us be more mindful, be better at becoming a more mindful workplace? What is that one piece of advice that you would give?
I think I would say, first off, listen to your employees. I think it's really easy to assume what is important to people. But whether you survey your team or have conversations, or, just have a like employee resource group that's just talking about wellness, but really find out what's important and then pick one strategy to implement and focus on that and do it really well. I think oftentimes, we assume that we know what's people is important to people, and then we pick the wrong thing, and then you're surprised when people don't find value in it and you get frustrated. Or on the flip side, we try to implement 5 things and they all go okay, but nothing's really wowed. You maybe only have a couple people bought in using it, and you're like, why isn't this going well? It's such a great idea. But, pick that one thing, focus on it, and then maybe the next year, leverage a committee to look at how did that go? Is there something else we can continue to build off of it, and just have it kind of build instead of trying to do everything at once?
What great advice. Jacqueline, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. This was a fun conversation. I know our audience has gained a ton of great positive advice out of this. So for all of you out there, thank you so much for joining us today. Listeners, if you enjoyed our topic, look for our new episodes every Tuesday morning, and we will likely rotate those topics and themes. But the common theme among all the episodes is that we believe they are critical to firms' growth and success. So please subscribe, and thank you all for listening. Everyone, have a fantastic day.